welcome to North Point. It's good to see you. And Nixon Nation, I'm not usually with you. And so I love being here. I love it. But and I don't want to alarm you, but you've got some people watching you right now. So don't mess up, okay? But could you help me welcome our Republic campus, which is watching live right now, and our Springfield campus watching live right now, and everyone online who's watching live right now as well. I know you didn't think you'd be clapping this long, I know. But in case you're new to North Point, we've been going through this series, walking through Invisible Jesus. Where is Jesus buried in the 66 books of Scripture? And a lot of times we can read Scripture, especially what we would know as the New Testament or the Gospels, and it's very easy to see Jesus. They point to Jesus. In fact, he was walking around in about 4 of those books. And so easy to identify where Jesus is. But sometimes when you read like the beginning of the Bible, we would call that the Old Testament. It's a lot harder to see where Jesus is. But what I find fascinating is that when Jesus walked and talked on this earth, he didn't have the New Testament. Okay, he just had, we call it the Old Testament, he calls it the only Testament. And so he knew those scriptures, he understood them, and he used them. And today we're talking about a book that Jesus quoted more than any other book in Scripture. So today we're talking about the book of Psalms. And Psalms is just a collection of songs by a bunch of different authors over a long period of time. And so as the Israelites would go and do different things, they would write different songs at different times, and that's how we have that collection of Psalms. And it's a bunch of songs that express a lot of big thoughts, big emotions, and big feelings. And speaking of big thoughts, big emotions, and big feelings, have you guys met my kids? You met them? I was thinking there's a lot of you here in Nixa that I haven't met yet, and Republic, and honestly, probably at Springfield too, where I'm at. So I want to take a moment. I want to introduce you to my family. You're going to see them running around here, all our campuses. So would you give me that first picture? I got a picture of my son right here, and this was 7 years ago when he was born. And the cool thing about my family, my grandpa's name is John Martz. My dad's name is John Martz. I'm John Martz, and so you could probably guess what we named our son. Beckham, exactly. You're right on. Says it up there. But next picture, please. And you get a little bit older. This is my wife, Mel. We've been married for 8 years and some change. It's the only time I've ever seen her wear a hat. And we got a picture of it. So I think that's pretty cool. Next photo. We didn't stop there. We've got a daughter, Sloan, and now our kids have grown up. My daughter's now 4. My son is 7. I'm not going to tell you my wife's age. But a lot has changed over the years. But if you're paying attention, the one thing that hasn't changed, next photo please, is my shirt and all these family photos. Isn't that cool? And so I wore my lucky shirt today, and I have not gained an ounce of muscle in the last 8 years, so that's tough. But if maybe you've got kids, maybe you got grandkids, or nieces and nephews, or foster kids, or maybe you're a teacher, maybe you coach a ball team, maybe you help out in Kid Point. Like, you understand that the struggle is real. Like, there's a lot of mood swings and temper tantrums and pity parties and bad hygiene, and that's just with your spouse. And then you've got that with your kids, and that's tough, right? Because there's a lot of things that are going on, and what I think about, they got a lot of big emotions and big feelings, especially over the stages. Like, I can remember back when we were in the newborn phase with our kids, and that was such a magical time. And really what I think about, if you've ever been in the newborn phase, I picture it's kind of like traveling solo in a foreign country. Like, there's a lot of weird smells. You're not sleeping very well. You're kind of sick a lot, right? You're trying to get your footing, but there's danger around every corner. You don't know where you're going or what you're doing sometimes. People are trying to talk to you, and very quickly you realize you do not speak that language. But it's full of wonder and awe, and it's amazing, and it's beautiful, and no matter what, you're going to remember this phase forever. And then they get a little bit older, and your kids become a toddler. And a lot of times I think having a toddler is like having a dog, okay? And hear me out, okay? Because just like every dog's a little different, every toddler's a little different. Okay, some are fun and enjoyable, and others you're just trying to not to get them to poop on the floor. Okay, and this is a fun stage because they start learning things. You can teach them different things, right? They can go grab you a water from the fridge, and you're like, this is awesome. And then you kick them out in the world, and they start interacting with people, and you're just kind of praying that they don't bite anybody, right? That's a toddler. And then they get a little bit older. And we've got a first grader now, which is unique. And it's kind of like having your in-laws live with you full time. All right? And maybe your in-laws, not mine. Mine are great, okay? But yours, they've got a lot of opinions. They do. They don't like the food you make, and they don't like the temperature of the house, and they want to tell you how it is. And sometimes they tell you in such a way that makes you want to explode. And you're like, what is going on here? But it's important to say that you love them. You love them, okay? And you really see yourself in them, for better or for worse, right? You see something, you're like, that's familiar. Did I mention that you love them? That's important, okay? You love them. And you just have to remind yourself that that phase is not going to be forever. and then they get a little bit older, and honestly, my kids aren't that age, so you have to tell me what that's like. But big emotions, big feelings, big thoughts. And when they're younger, you make the decisions for them. That's just the way it goes. Like when they're one, your daughter's not going to be like, Mom, the sailor suit again. No, I look like Popeye in this. Like she just puts it on. It's fine. You make the decision for them. We've got a picture actually real quick of my son, Beckham. We put him in a pumpkin. That was cool. He didn't even care until he did. But you can do whatever you want when they're younger. You make the decisions for them. But I think everyone's goal as a parent or a parent-like figure, you want your kids to grow up in such a way where they're able to make decisions on their own. Like that's the goal, that one day they would make smart, healthy decisions for themselves. And what I found is sometimes kids, they act like kids, right? And sometimes even when they're adults, they act like kids. And sometimes we as adults, we act like kids. And so today, as we talk about the Psalms, I want to talk about the psalmist. And his name is David. And again, the Psalms were written by a bunch of different people, a bunch of different, over a long period of time. David wrote most of the Psalms. He wrote 73 of 150 of them. And David was a king that at times, he acted like a kid. And he needed someone to butt in and correct him. And so, he'd write these psalms that are powerful, and they're full of wisdom and hope, and they're loving, and they're helping. And then, the next psalm he writes is like a little kid having a pity party. And it's like, what is going on here? There's one, Psalm 13:6. He writes, I will sing of the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. I'm like, I think we sang something like that today. That's good. And then he'll turn around, and right before that, he writes, help me slap their faces. First this cheek, then the other. Your fist hardened their teeth. And I'm like, big emotions, big feelings, expressed uniquely. And then he'll write, Psalm 56:8. You've taken note of my journey through life. You've caught each of my tears in your bottle. I'm like, I'd go to Hobby Lobby and put that in my office. That's beautiful. And then later on, Psalm 109, he writes, may a creditor seize all he has. May strangers plunder the fruits of his labor. May no one extend kindness to him or take pity on his fatherless children. And I'm like, David, dude, chill, okay? And so all this is one guy who's got this range of emotions. But if we're honest, we have a range of emotions. Sometimes we get the grown-up version of us that's kind, that's helpful, that's wise, and then the very next day, you can get the 8-year-old us on the playground that's ashamed of their response. I don't know if grown-up you's ever gone grocery shopping, and then you get home and kid you's like, why didn't I buy any ice cream? What was I thinking? Grown-up you can handle some stress at work with poise and confidence. There's also a kid version of you that's crying in your office that's like, I can't handle this. Shut the shades. No one look at me. No one look at me. Okay? Grown-up you will post pictures of your kids on social media. Kid you will fight like a kid behind the keyboard on social media. Like, we've all got this in us. All of us at times, we're like a grown-up, and at other times, we can act like a kid. And by the way, it's kind of okay. It's okay. It's okay to have those emotions. It's not always okay to respond the way that we respond, and there's consequences to some of our actions when we do that. But it's okay to feel those things. In fact, the Psalms, this book, it tells us two different things. First thing the book of Psalms shows us is that it's okay to be okay. It's okay. It's okay to be okay. It's okay when life is great. Like, it's okay to be grateful and to show thanks when things are going well. And I think sometimes we show up to a church setting and we think that a place like this can only be helpful if we're hurting. And that's not the case. In fact, the Psalms gives us a ton of language for when life is okay. How do I say thanks for that? How do I show gratitude for that? Every week isn't always the worst week of your life, okay? Statistically, that's just like, that's not the stats, all right? Usually your weeks are okay. Usually they're normal. Sometimes they're the same. Some people would call that boring. I call that awesome. And so bottom line is this: it's okay to be okay. Here's what the Psalms also show us. Second thing is that it's okay to not be okay. That's okay as well. It is okay to not be okay. It's okay to have very real problems in our very real life that's plaguing us. Like, it's okay to be real, and you don't have to walk into a place like this and act like everything's perfect because it is okay not to be okay. In fact, a lot of the Psalms that the Israelites write over the course of years, it's a time when they weren't okay. There's a whole chapter, which this is crazy, and this is why context is important, okay, when you're reading the Psalms. There's a whole chapter, Psalm 137, that the Israelites get captured, and they get taken into captivity, and then their captors are like mocking them, and they say, hey, sing us one of your psalms. And so they make up a psalm about throwing their enemies' babies up against a wall. And you're like, by the way, don't just like pull open the Bible and read that. Context is important, okay? You have to understand that sometimes things weren't okay. And you have to understand what was going on when you read some of those things. But they don't hold back, okay? All this to say, the book of Psalms is this eclectic book of songs that tell a collective story of what was going on in the lives of the Israelites at that time. And so, it's fascinating to even look at this. And because a lot of this is known as poetry when you look at the Psalms. It's poetry. And when I think poetry, I think flowery love language. It rhymes. It's this cute little thing. I don't know the last time you cracked open a book of poetry, but I don't do that often. But actually, this book, poetry looks a lot different in Hebrew, which is the language it was written in. In Hebrew, they only had 8,000 words. Today, in English, we have close to 200,000. Way, way more if you count like medical terms that no one, not very few people use. But they didn't have a lot of words to choose from. And so what poetry back then was, it's not like how do we rhyme and make it sound cute. It's greater pressure per word. So when you write these psalms, it's every single word matters and means something. You gotta dissect the meaning out of it. And I know when I said poetry, I lost all the dudes in here, okay? But I come back, because poetry was not this like love flowery language, and that's what poetry was. Actually, most of the Psalms were written by a warrior king who led 1 million dudes out to battle and didn't say go to battle. He said follow me to battle, and he led the way, and he talks about it. And so a lot of these Psalms are not flowery language. They're just words that don't usually go together that show a unique meaning. And so today, here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the psalmist, this king that at times acted like a kid. And you're going to be thinking, okay, are we talking about David today? Or are we talking about the Psalms today? And again, the answer is both, yes, okay? Because we have to understand what was going on in David's life as he wrote some of these Psalms. So we have context on what they meant and why they're so important. And so I'm going to give you a quick backstory of David and what his life was like. And If you've met me, you know that at times I can become the Energizer Bunny and I can just talk really fast and I can go. This is my apology ahead of time, and this is my attempt to slow down for you, okay? But a little backstory on David is he grew up as a shepherd boy. And while he was sheep sitting, he developed some talents. He learned how to do a slingshot. He learned how to play the harp. He became a protector of his sheep. In fact, there's a time where a lion tried to attack their sheep and he killed it with their bare hands. Like, this is an incredible guy. But his dad didn't see that in him. In fact, there's a time that a guy came to town. His name is Samuel, and he was appointing the next king. And he went to Jesse, David's dad's house. And he said, hey, bring out all your sons. I think the next king is here. And so Jesse brings out 7 of his 8 sons. You can guess who he left out. And Samuel's like, no, it's none of these sons. Do you have one more? And Jesse says, well, I've got the runt of the litter. He's doing some chores. And he's like, bring him in. And so he sees David, and he's like, that's the new king. He anoints him in private, in secret. No one really knows. And so, by the way, David's life doesn't change. He goes back to sheep sitting until a little bit later, a few years later, he picks up a job as an Uber Eats deliverer, okay? And he delivers some food out to his brothers who are at war. And as he's taking the food there, we hear about Goliath, okay? Maybe you don't even need to crack open a Bible to know the story of David and Goliath, David the giant slayer. If you've watched one March Madness tournament, you know it, all right? An undersized underdog team takes out a team with a giant ego. They become a viral sensation overnight. Yep, that's David. And so then he gets invited to the king's courts, and all of a sudden now he's playing the harp for the current king, while secretly he knows he's going to be the next king. And the current king knows that the kingship is not going to continue in his lineage, and so he's like almost guessing who the next king is, and I think he thinks it's David. And so he has some fits of rage, and he throws a spear at David a few times and misses, and then David will run away, and then the very next day he'll come back and play his harp for King Saul, which is wild, okay? If someone throws a spear at me, like, one, you best not miss, because I'm not coming back, all right? I'm like, no way, you don't get a second shot at that. Like, but David, what type of unresolved issues does he have to have in his life that he would go back to an abusive relationship like that? You know, I think of David, who is forgotten about by his dad, who probably developed some issues of feeling unwanted and unloved, who's then seeking the approval of someone who's like a dad, a king, who he'll do anything to make him happy. And eventually, they find out there's a plot to kill David. David escapes, and he's on the run. He's public enemy number 1. And he gets a band of misfits, and these actually become David's mighty men. And during this time when he's on the run, when he's like, I don't know what my life's gonna look like, things are crazy, he actually begins to write a lot of his psalms. In fact, there's a psalm he writes here. He starts to kind of look inward and look at his life and be like, where am I at? What am I doing? What do I have? And he writes this in Psalm 27:10. He says, though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. He starts to do this inward work of what's going on in my life. And a lot of the Psalms come from this time. And so then King Saul, he had many times to kill him, chose not to. King Saul eventually dies, and David becomes the next king. Finally. Like this kid who was appointed as a king and had to live years and years and years and years, knowing this, knowing what his destiny is going to be, but not being able to step into that. And he finally gets it. And during this time, he's known as a man after God's own heart. He's a warrior. He develops all these amazing skills. But what's crazy is, as soon as David becomes a king, he starts to act like a kid. Like what's wild is when David was a kid, he actually acted like a king. And then as soon as he became a king, he sure acted like a kid. there was a time, David's this warrior guy. He killed the giant. He's a giant slayer. And they'd write songs about him that Saul's killed thousands, David's killed tens of thousands. And so everyone knows him as this warrior guy. And he eventually becomes king, and the Israelites go off to war, and he's like, you guys go without me. He's like, I'm going to stay back. What's interesting is comfort will do that to you. It will. Like, if you think about, like, what's the most dangerous item in your house? What do you think? Republic, Springfield, like, what most dangerous item in your house? A lot of us might be like, oh, my knife set, or I don't know, power tools. I guess someone flexing their muscles here, maybe me, electrical sockets, stairs, I don't know. It's actually interesting. They say the most dangerous object in your house is your couch, which, hear me out. Okay, your couch isn't trying to kill you, but it's amazing the amount of things that we won't do because of the comfort we receive, like when we're there. And we love comfort. Our brains are wired to go after comfort. We seek comfort. Like, we buy comfort. We cherish comfort. Actually, there's whole brands that are built on comfort. Maybe you own one of these puppies, okay? Yeah, Lazy Boy. Here you got a Lazy Boy. Yeah, those are nice. Honestly, I like those. But it's interesting. They're not called Risky Boy or Adventurous Boy, okay? For a reason. There's a Lazy Boy. And so what happened was David finally became king, and guess what he became? Lazy Boy. And what does a bored dude, while everyone else is off to war with a bunch of unresolved dad issues, turn to? Women, of course. That's going to solve his issues. And so what does he do? He hops up on the roof of his kingdom, and he starts to look over at his palace, and he sees a gal taking a bath. Which, ironically, her name is Bathsheba, okay? If she was taking a shower, it might be Shower Sheba. I don't know, but it's Bathsheba, okay? And David wasn't looking at this gal oh, no, I can't believe I saw that. No, he was lusting, okay? He wasn't worried about her loofah technique and is she getting clean? Like, no, he wasn't concerned. It was lust. And so what he does is he calls for her to come to him, and they have an affair. And then they find out that Bathsheba's pregnant. So what does David do? He's got to lie. He's got to cover up another lie. And so he's like, I got to get rid of her husband. And tries to make it look like, he slept with her so that the baby would be theirs. But he's a noble man who won't leave his fighting positions. And so David's like, I got another plan. I'm going to make it look like I'm not killing him by killing him. And I'm going to put him on the front lines where the fighting is the fiercest, which is actually the spot that David's supposed to be at. So he puts him on the front lines, and Uriah dies. So now you've got David, this man after God's own heart, who's committed adultery, he's committed murder, he's sexually taken advantage of a woman, theft. It's bad when theft doesn't even sound that bad, okay? And so this guy, what's going on in his life? And I think, here's the deal, I think this is a lesson for all of us. And I wrote it down this way. That the monsters we face around us are not as destructive as the monsters we can face within us. The monsters we face around us are not as destructive as the monsters we face within us. And when David was a kid, it was the things that he did in secret when no one was watching that led to his success. And then when David became an adult, it was the things he did in secret when no one was watching that led to his downfall. And I don't know what that looks like for you. Like, I don't know what image you present. I don't know how good your family looks. I don't know what level of success you've achieved. It's not about what's happening on the outside. It's the things that are going on the inside that if you don't deal with, they will deal with you. And a lot of times they come out in some really weird ways. And whether those are decisions that you make, or maybe they're decisions that other people make, and you have consequences to those decisions. Like, I think about Bathsheba in this moment. She didn't choose any of this. And she lost her husband, and she got taken advantage of. I wonder what kind of monster she's dealing with on the inside, trying to rationalize everything that's going on. And maybe you feel like that. And I just want to remind you, if you don't if you don't deal with some of the things inside of you, they will come out. And they'll come out at some really weird times. And so sometimes we try to make everything look perfect on the outside, but we're dealing with a monster on the inside. Because all of us have this kid that's hurting, that's broken inside. How do we talk with that kid? And when we look at David, everyone knew. By the way, you can put on whatever front you want on the outside. I think people know what's going on. They can tell. I bet David and Bathsheba were the talk of the kingdom. Okay? But no one said anything. It's like the emperor with no clothes. He just reached this level of success that everyone's a little bit afraid to tell him the truth. Because deception is a team sport. And it finally got to the point where God sent someone to David to give him the truth. And this is a story. I want you to hold on to this story, okay? This story is powerful. And I think there's some parallels that you're going to see in this story. It says this. So the Lord sent Nathan to David. And when he came to him, he said, there were two men in a certain town, one rich, the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb that he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, it drank from his cup, it even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now, a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare the meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. And so David, in hearing this, he burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. And Nathan said to David, you are that man. David had everything he could have ever wanted, and yet he still wanted more. And believe it or not, this wasn't the time that Nathan and David exchanged friendship bracelets and took photos in the photo booth in the mall, okay? This was, a deep truth that David didn't want to see. And by the way, I think we all need that. I think it's helpful that all of us, here's what we need. I need a friend who will see what I'm not seeing and say what I'm not hearing. That's what I need. All of us need this. We need a friend that will see what I'm not seeing and say what I'm not hearing. Because for all of us, there are times in our life that we act like a kid. And it's so easy to see it in everybody else, but it's so hard to see it in us. I don't know what your relationship with your spouse looks like, but sometimes they'll use that tone, you know what I mean? And then that kind of triggers you, and now you chirp back, and then now you're fighting. And I'm just curious, do you have anyone in your life that can speak into your marriage? Have you invited anybody to do that? Have you given access to anybody to do that? When it comes to your work and, maybe you've got a high level of authority, and when things don't go your way, I'm mad and I'm angry, and you can blow up on some coworkers, and, you can affect some people's lives, and you've got that power, you've got that authority. I'm curious, do you have anyone that can be honest with you, that can speak into your life, that sees that version of you? When it comes to your parenting, and when your kids act like a kid and then they act so much like a kid that you begin to act like a kid, do you have anybody that can speak into your life in that area? Have you given access to anybody to do that? So we all need that. We all need someone who will see what we're not seeing and say what we're not hearing. I remember there was a time in college I would have been 20 years old. So obviously I knew everything, okay? And that was just I know it all. And there was a time when, church was not my favorite thing. to say nicely. There's a time I stopped attending, and by the way, I'm not like, oh my word, you have to be in church every single week or anything like that, but I very much had this thought of man, I kind of think the church is corrupt. I think there's a lot of problems with the church, and by the way, are there with some? Absolutely. But what's interesting is I had a friend that came up to me, and I was like, man, church is selfish, it's corrupt, it's manipulative. There's so many things that I don't like about the church. But when he came and talked to me, I realized actually those were a lot of things that I didn't like about myself, that I was doing, that I was living, that I was a little self-centered, that my arrows pointed in, that I was selfish, that I was a little corrupt. And you know what? I didn't enjoy hearing that. I didn't. And I could only imagine what David could feel like when he heard something like this. When someone came to him and revealed something in his lowest moment, in his deepest regret, he's spiraling downward, he's hit rock bottom, and someone shares a truth like this. I think David sets a good example after a lot of bad examples. Because he begins to write this psalm, and it's Psalm 51. And I want to read it to you. I think this could be a prayer for us as well. It says this. He says, God, take away my sin, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. I'm going to pause right there, okay? Because I know that maybe sounds cute, and you might be like, oh, cool, throw me in the laundry, and I'll come out clean. That sounds awesome. What David is actually saying here, this word wash in Hebrew, to wash is to take some clothes and bang it up against a rock and then scrub it against a scrubbing board. If this was a person being washed, it would be very painful. In fact, what David is praying right here is, God, don't remove the consequences to my sin. Actually, let me feel the full force of those consequences. Let me experience that so that on the other side, I can become clean. And I think a lot of times when we mess up, when we make a mistake, a lot of times my prayer is, God, can you just fix it? Can you just wave your magic wand and everything's perfect again? That would be awesome. But David prays a different prayer. He says, God, wash me. Let me feel the consequences of my sin. And then he continues to write, and he says this, a famous verse, create in me a pure heart, O God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. This next part is so important. Do not cast me from your presence or take away your Holy Spirit from me. The one thing David knew that I think a lot of us forget, whether it's a decision we made, whether it's a decision someone else made, that we have consequences of those decisions. One of the things David always prayed that made him unique and made him a man after God's own heart is the way that he pursued God's presence. He knew that God's presence would ultimately heal what needs to be healed and reveal what needs to be revealed. And when we look at the Psalms aren't something we just read on a Sunday morning and we're like, oh, that's nice. The Psalms aren't something that we just, tattoo on our body. Like, the Psalms aren't something to be studied. They're something to be experienced. And what would it look like to experience God's presence today? What would that do to your life if you leaned in on that? I think about it this way, okay? I've got a few sponges here, okay? And which, by the way, does anyone know what is the purpose of a sponge? Anyone know? Okay, Republic, okay. Okay, I know it's a trap. Some of you are like, it's a trap. It may be. Purpose of a sponge, right? A lot of people would be like, clean something. No, actually, the purpose of a sponge is to soak up water. Like, if a sponge can sponge water, right, then it's doing its job. After it soaks up some water, then you can use it for a lot of different things. But if it's like a brick and it doesn't soak up water, you can't use it for those things. So the whole purpose of a sponge is that it would be able to soak up water. That's its purpose. Now, I got a sponge right here that's, this sponge has never even touched the water, okay? This sponge, I don't know what this sponge thinks of water. This sponge might be curious of water. This sponge may never even have heard of water. This sponge might be aquagnostic. Okay, maybe this sponge doesn't even believe in water. It's like, I don't even think it exists. I've never experienced it. This sponge is still in the package. Now, let me ask you this. Just because this sponge has never experienced water, does that change its purpose? No. Like, its whole goal is still to soak up water, whether it's done that or not. And then I've got another sponge here, okay? And I don't, this probably isn't going to translate too well at Republic and Springfield, even here at Nixa. But this sponge, if you could hold this, it kind of feels like a brick, okay? This sponge, it's hardened. At one point in time, this sponge was in the water. And then for whatever reason, I don't know what happened, but it's not in the water anymore. And over time, it hardened, kind of thawed out, and now I'm I can't even imagine this sponge soaking up water, okay? It's just, but it was in there at one point in time, and now it's not. And so I don't know where you feel like you relate to this. I don't like to think of myself as a sponge, but when I think about faith, I think about these areas. For some of us, maybe you are dedicated to his presence. Maybe that's something you pursue. Maybe that's something you think about a lot. How can I be near to you? How can you be near to me? Maybe we've got one of the habits here at North Point that the Holy Spirit would lead us throughout our day. And maybe that's something you pray a lot. Maybe that's something you think about a lot. And you're like, God, every single day, how do I get in your presence? Because I know that's going to reveal my purpose and what I'm designed to do. Maybe that's you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you feel like this sponge, still in the package. You've never experienced that. And one, you're not bad. I'm not here to guilt and shame you and be like, you better get out of the package and get in the water and everything will be perfect when you do that. That's not my goal. In fact, saying that would probably be a lie. But if you're curious, if you're interested, if maybe you feel like you haven't been living your purpose and you just feel a little empty inside, what would it look like to invite God into your life? And I'm curious what in your life would change when you do that. I think sometimes we can even fool ourselves because sometimes we feel like we're that sponge, but we feel a little empty and we're like, why do I not feel that way? I think sometimes we can see God up close. We can experience other people experiencing him without doing it ourselves. And you know what that's like? It's like taking a packaged sponge and putting it right in the water. And you're like, see, I think I'm doing it. But no water's actually getting in on you. And you can come to church every single week and you can serve and you can be involved in all these areas, but you're like, why do I feel empty? What would his presence look like in your day-to-day? Maybe that would make an impact and a difference on you. But maybe you feel like this sponge, where you've been hardened. And I don't know what happened, okay? I don't know if it's a decision you made. Maybe it's something you said. Maybe it's something you did. Maybe it's an experience that you were involved with. Maybe it was a church that hurt you. Maybe it was a person that hurt you. And all of a sudden you're here. And your heart has been hardened. You feel jaded. You've got some guilt. You've got some shame. And I don't know what's holding you back from the water. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's arrogance. Maybe it's just fear. But what would it look like in your life to stop carrying that around and just say, God, I don't know. Sometimes we feel like, God, I don't even know if you want to take me back, but would you? I want to let you know today, he wants you back. And he loves you and he cares about you. Whether it's a stupid decision that you made like David, he wants you back in his presence. In fact, it says when you do that and you get back in his presence and you invite him back in your life to lead you, it says he removes your sins as far as the east is from the west. That's what it does. What would it look like to do that? And maybe you feel this way not because of a decision that you made, but maybe it was a decision that someone else made. Maybe you're sitting in a room like this and you don't feel like David, you feel like Bathsheba. You feel taken advantage of. You were hurt by someone. And all of a sudden you thought you were doing the right thing and that was the experience you received. I want no part in that. And maybe you've been carrying around a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness. By the way, I wish that I had the words to say to fix everything. Like I really wish I did, and I don't. Like I prayed before this, I'm like, God, give me the magic words to heal someone's heart to be able to do that. And I'm so sorry, but I don't got them. And I don't want to promise you a cheap gimmick that you think would help for a day or two. Like that's probably some very real pain you're experiencing. And my guess is you're probably tired, and you don't want to be carrying this around. You don't want to be carrying around this depression, this pain, this bitterness, this anger. And I bet it's pretty tiring, and I bet it's pretty heavy. And here's what I found. The beginning of God's strength is an awareness of our weakness. The moment that you say, God, I don't want to carry this around. I'm tired of this. I'm done with this. Can you help me carry this? Which, by the way, that's baptisms. It's not, hey, my life looks perfect now. I guess it's time to get baptized. It's like, oh my word, I can't carry this around anymore. God, I need you in my life every single day. I'm admitting, God, I'm not strong enough to carry this. Can your strength come in and carry this with me? And when you do that, by the way, you may feel like a hardened brick right here. As soon as you get in his presence, look at this. Back to doing what you were designed to do. And I'm not saying that healing happens instantly. That's not the case. That's not the reality. But you can be reminded of your presence and your purpose when you get back in his presence. So for all of us, like where's Jesus in Psalms? It's the two things that David needed more than anything else. David needed a father that loved him no matter what. And he needed forgiveness from some dumb decisions that he made, from some hurtful decisions that he made. And so in Psalms, and Jesus is our forgiving father. He's our forgiving father. And what if we walked out of a place like this today and we believed that? What if we walked out today and we believed how loved we were and then we lived in that love? I'm curious how different your week would look. I'm curious whose approval you wouldn't be seeking anymore. I'm curious, like, what would that do to your family and your work life and your finances and your marriage and your career? Like, I'm just curious if we actually believed that, because the Psalms aren't meant to be studied, they're meant to be experienced. And how do we experience a forgiving Father this week? He's there, he's ready. How do we get in his presence and we believe that? So what I want to do is I just want to pray a prayer for you. And I don't want this to be a one-time prayer. I want this to be a prayer that you pray every single day this week. I just believe it's going to begin to transform your heart and your life. Let me pray with you. God, would you heal the things that need to be healed within us? Better that, would you reveal the things that need to be revealed within us so that we can heal the things that need to be healed within us? God, would you begin to fill those holes in our heart that we experience? And would we be able to invite your presence into our life this week as you lead our life? We invite you in to do that. And God, that you'd remind us of our purpose and what we're here and what we're designed to do as we invite your presence in. In your name, amen. Amen. I want to say this. If any one of our campuses, if you prayed that prayer and maybe you felt like, this sponge and you're like, hey, I want to experience that for the first time. Sometimes it's easier said than done. And what I would ask you to do is mark on this connection card that you want to make a decision to follow Jesus, because we want to send you some resources this week to help you do that. And you don't have to mark the card to make it real, but I do know we'd love to help you and partner with you on that process at all of our campuses. I want to invite our ushers forward, because on this connection card, whether you're writing a prayer request, we'd love to pray with you, whether it's a next step, whether it's just something in the I will statement, it is such an honor every single week to get to follow up with these cards, to have that conversation. I know sometimes it can feel like a big church, and this is our way to connect with you through these connection cards. And also, it's also our opportunity to give. And I want to say a huge thank you for those of you who invest in and through North Point. It's a big deal. In fact, cool story is this past week, we got a letter sent to us because over the give back, back to school give back time, we collected a whole bunch of backpacks and lunch boxes and school supplies, and we collected so many that sometimes we'll set aside a budget just in case we don't hit that, right? And we're like, if for some reason no backpacks come in, we have the money to go buy that. And you all brought in so many things that we didn't have to touch that budget. And so we ended up distributing that to a bunch of schools around the Ozarks. And we got a letter this week from a few teachers saying that they were so worried about buying school supplies because they knew there was going to be a bunch of kids that were coming in that wouldn't have them. And thank you, North Point, for providing that. And so, seriously, thank you for what you do. Your generosity is incredible, and it helps this community. So thank you. So ushers at all of our campuses, we can pass those buckets. We can drop our cards, our giving in those buckets. And while we do that, we've got a video. I know a lot of us are interested in what does the search process look like for our next lead pastor? And so we've got a quick video giving you an update on that. And there's even a spot where we want your voice to play a part. And so let's check it out.
North Point. Justin here, and I wanted to give a quick update on what the search process looks like for the next lead pastor. The board has prayerfully chosen 6 people to make up a search team. I'm part of that search team along with Jen Davis, Jody Dow, Steph Politis, Shannon McMurtry, and Jake Smith. So with those names, what that means is that team includes staff, a board member, and people inside and outside of the church to give the best viewpoints possible. And we've been collecting applications, and the board has been contacting prospective candidates since August 1st. And at the beginning of September, we will officially start going through those applications. There's a scoring rubric that separates the applications based on strengths and weaknesses, and the strongest applications will move on to the next phase, where the search team is going to conduct interviews with the goal of getting the pool of candidates down to 2 or 3 so that we can present those to the board. And once those names are to the board, hopefully by October, the board will then start a full interview process that could take up to a month. Now, we don't have a timeline on this process. We just have a commitment to make sure that the right person is found and that the mission prevails. So that's a lot of detailed information. And if you've zoned out, just come on back, okay? Because this is where you come in. We have created a survey on the app that asks one simple question. What are you looking for in the next lead pastor? It's a quick multiple choice survey that has 5 answers that you're going to rank in order from important to critically important. And those 5 answers are actually the 5 most common things that came up when we all talked with the staff. So take some time, open that app, and fill that survey out. And we're going to keep giving updates monthly as this process moves forward. Know that we as a search team are in prayer, and we're committed to finding the right person. So pray with us and keep your eyes on the mission, and let's continue to make this a safe place to find and follow Jesus.